Liam is a worn-out office worker who hasn't had a full night's sleep in years. His job feels like a never-ending gauntlet of deadlines and unreasonable demands, orchestrated by cold-blooded executives in expensive suits. The only thing keeping him grounded is the love of his wife and young daughter. When he finally trudges home one evening, he's greeted by his wife, Mika, who welcomes him with a tired but genuine smile. He immediately asks about their daughter, Kanemi. Mika tells him Kanemi is already in bed, but she spent the entire afternoon pleading for a dog. Liam knows money's tight and they're barely keeping up as it is, but when he peeks in to see Kanemi fast asleep, her peaceful face tugs at his heart. He starts wondering if maybe, just maybe, getting a dog wouldn't be so bad, even if it means picking up extra hours to make it work. The next morning, he surprises Kanemi by taking her to the pet store. Her joy is infectious, and for the first time in a while, Liam feels like he's doing something right. Mika is shocked that he actually agreed, especially given how overworked he already is, but Liam shrugs it off. If he can bring a little happiness to his family, the stress is worth it. That optimism doesn't last long. Back at the office, he's immediately dragged back into chaos. His boss is yelling about a missing report. Liam calmly explains he already submitted it last Thursday, but his boss had been out all day living it up and clearly never saw it. Still, Liam ends up taking the fall, like always. His workplace is a constant cycle of blame, stress, and manipulation. Superiors treat him like a dumping ground for responsibility, and his co-workers either ignore him or steal his credit. But no matter how bad the day gets, the thought of Mika and Kanemi waiting at home gives him the strength to keep going. Then one morning, while commuting by train, he gets a message from his friend Nita. Nita's ranting excitedly about a new collectible that just released, begging Liam to grab one before it sells out. Liam chuckles to himself. Nita hasn't changed, and decides to help out. He hops off early and pulls up directions on his phone, but is unfamiliar with the area and ends up completely lost. As he's scanning for a street sign or landmark, something catches his eye: Mika, sitting outside a cafe across the street, laughing with another man. For a moment, Liam freezes. His brain refuses to process it. Mika had told him she was taking Kanemi to her martial arts class today. So why is she here, looking so carefree? That night, when he comes home, he casually asks Mika how her day went. She answers effortlessly, said she dropped Kanemi off and ran some errands, nothing out of the ordinary. Liam wants to confront her, wants to demand answers, but instead he just nods and pretends nothing's wrong. He tells himself there must be a reasonable explanation. Maybe he was mistaken. Maybe he's so sleep-deprived he imagined it. Surely, Mika wouldn't lie to him. Not her. The next day, desperate for clarity, he tries to put his work aside and take a walk. His computer crashes during standby, as always, so he just shuts it down and heads out. Without fully realizing it, he ends up back in the same neighborhood. At first, there's nothing. Relief washes over him. Maybe it really was just a misunderstanding. But then he hears a soft, familiar voice nearby, Mika, on the phone, laughing gently. She even brought Kanemi with her when she met the unfamiliar man. At first, Liam assumed he was just a close friend, maybe someone Kanemi liked being around. But then, he heard it, his daughter calling that man dad. The word hit him harder than any insult or blow he'd ever taken from his supervisor. He stood frozen, the world around him fading into a blur. Eventually, he forced himself to return to work, pretending nothing had happened. In his mind, he clung to flimsy rationalizations. Maybe it was a game. Maybe Kanemi just liked pretending with people. Maybe this guy was a family friend who filled in when Liam wasn't around. But none of it added up. As those thoughts circled, his boss suddenly stormed over and started berating him for standing idle. Liam responded calmly, explaining that his computer takes time to reboot because of persistent standby issues, and for safety reasons, he always shuts it down during his breaks. His boss was unimpressed, barking that maybe Liam shouldn't take breaks at all if he couldn't manage his responsibilities. Before Liam could reply, his phone rang. It was Mika, her voice frantic. Kanemi had been in a serious accident. Without hesitating, Liam dashed out of the office and raced to the hospital. Once there, he asked where Kanemi was. Mika told him she was already in surgery. A doctor soon approached, asking if they were her parents. Both immediately said yes. The doctor explained Kanemi needed an emergency blood transfusion and asked for their blood types. Liam answered AB positive. Mika said O negative. The doctor nodded and asked Mika to come with him. Liam stepped forward, confused, and asked why his blood wasn't needed. The doctor replied that Kanami's blood type was O negative, Liam's AB positive wasn't a match. Left in the waiting area, Liam tried to stay composed. But something gnawed at him. He pulled out his phone and searched the compatibility. A few moments later, he found his answer. An AB positive parent cannot have an O negative child, not by chance, not by mutation. It wasn't just unlikely, it was scientifically impossible. His heart dropped. He waited until Mika returned, then stared at her with all the weight of the world in his eyes. He asked her outright, was Kanemi ever truly his daughter? Mika didn't answer. Instead, she exploded with anger, flipping the accusation. She shouted that if anyone had a right to be upset, it was her. That Liam was never home. that he clearly didn't care about their family. Liam tried to explain, he worked long hours to keep them afloat. He sacrificed everything for them. But Mika wasn't listening. She cut him off, insulted his job, called it meaningless. She said he was stuck in a dead-end role with no real future. How could he ever offer her the life she deserved? Staggered, Liam stood speechless. But Mika went on. She said she'd raised Kanemi practically alone for 10 years. That he had never really been part of the family. And then, as if none of it mattered, she announced she was leaving and taking Kanemi with her. Liam demanded to know where she thought she was going, but Mika ignored him, calling out to Kanemi and telling her to pack up. In a panic, Liam reached out, gripping Kanami's arm, pleading with her not to leave. He cried out that he had always done his best, always put her first. But then, Kanemi looked at him and said, with chilling calm, that she liked her other dad more. And in that single moment, whatever was left inside Liam shattered completely. The following morning, Liam trudged into work like a ghost, empty, numb, already shattered. But his day somehow plummeted further. Without warning, Liam was accused of embezzling 50 million yen. He stammered his innocence, denying it with everything he had, but the evidence was damning. The transfer logs traced directly back to his employee terminal. No discussion. He was fired on the spot. The hits didn't stop there. Soon after, Mika filed for divorce. Worse, she demanded child support, despite Liam knowing the child was never his to begin with. Still under criminal investigation, and desperate to avoid prison time, he agreed to repay the entire sum just to stay out of a cell. He took the first job he could find, back-breaking construction work that grinds men down long before their debts disappear. His life from that point on became a slow-motion collapse. The only sign of life came from Nita, who occasionally messaged him with cheerful notes about new Gundam episodes. For a second, Liam would think about replying, maybe suggesting they watch it like old times. But he never sent those replies. He couldn't bear the thought of Nita seeing what he'd become. He told himself to endure, to survive, hoping some miracle might lift him from the mud. But one afternoon, while eating a cheap lunch, a deep cough seized him, and he spat blood into his napkin. That was the moment he knew things weren't getting better. That night, sleep eluded him. The coughing had worsened. Seeing a doctor wasn't even a consideration. He could barely afford food, let alone treatment. So he curled into himself, trembling in bed, waiting for death to finally take him. But just as the last flickers of strength ebbed from his body, a strange radiance bloomed above him, and visions began to unfold. In those visions, the truth emerged piece by piece. He hadn't stolen a single yen, it had all been orchestrated by his boss. The same man who was having an affair with Mika. Every excuse she'd fed him, her emotional distance, the cold arguments, had been part of the con. She never loved him. She only saw him as a paycheck. She had helped set him up from the very beginning. Liam's breath caught in his chest, not from illness, but from the weight of betrayal. Then a voice echoed through the light, and a man stepped forward from its glow. The stranger confirmed everything Liam had seen. Then, with quiet intensity, he asked, was Liam truly planning to just lie there and let the people who destroyed his life walk away? Shaking, hollowed out by heartbreak and fury, Liam clenched his fists. He was done being the victim. In that instant, something shifted. He swore, no matter the price, no matter what he became, he would make them suffer. The man gave a satisfied grin, pleased by the vengeance burning in Liam's soul, and said he was glad to have arrived when he did. Still, Liam didn't know who this mysterious figure was. So he asked, who the hell are you, and why are you here? The man replied that he was just someone who'd taken an interest in Liam, of a man who, despite everything, had never stopped trying to do right. But Liam no longer cared about being good. That path had left him with nothing. If he had the chance again, he'd live for himself. That answer was exactly what the man wanted. So he made Liam an offer, a fresh beginning in another world. All Liam had to do was choose one. Liam isn't sure whether he's delusional or actually dying, but if this is real, if he really gets to choose a new life, he's not holding back. He recalls Nita once mentioning alternate worlds, including one where towering machines called Gundams exist. That sounds perfect. The mysterious man gives a nod and explains that the world Liam's chosen is a fusion of sorcery and futuristic tech, a realm ruled by nobles, where hierarchy and influence control everything. Under normal circumstances, Liam might have ended up a nobody in some backwater town, but the man says he'll do him a favor, he'll place Liam in the household of a count who oversees an entire planet. Liam can hardly process it. For the first time, it feels like life is finally going his way. With the last of his strength, he signs the strange contract offered to him. The moment the ink dries, his soul detaches from his dying body and speeds toward an entirely new reality. On the planet known as Hydra, the scene shifts to Liam's 5th birthday. His mother has planned something special. With a smile, she calls him over and casts a levitation spell. Rising gently into the air, Liam floats after her into the next room. Inside, a massive birthday cake and a towering present await him. He sprints over and tears the wrapping off the box, revealing a sleek, futuristic cube inside. His mom explains that it's a console for designing his own AI assistant, called an AMA. Through the cube, he can customize everything about her, appearance, personality, even odd little details that are conveniently left out. Baffled, Liam asks why she's giving something like this to a 5-year-old, but she simply replies that it's essential, leaving it at that. Then his father enters the room with a gift of his own. But it's not a toy or gadget. It's the entire Banfield estate. Liam is stunned. He can't believe his dad would hand over their noble title and land to someone still in kindergarten. He asks if it's for real. His dad nods. There's just one small condition: they want to retire to a peaceful villa and live out their days in comfort. To do that, they'll need a monthly stipend. All Liam has to do is agree to support them financially, and the title is his. Excited by the idea of holding such power, Liam doesn't stop to question anything. He doesn't wonder why any sane adult would surrender a whole noble house to a child. His father presents the agreement, and without reading a word, Liam signs it on the spot. With that, his parents say farewell and head off to their quiet new life, leaving Liam completely unaware that he's just been tricked. But to him, it doesn't matter. He's now officially a count. And he vows to make full use of his status, so no one will ever step on him again. In his eyes, the strange man gave him a second chance, and he's genuinely thankful for it. What Liam doesn't know is that the man isn't some kind benefactor. He thrives on despair. After sending Liam to his new reality, he turns his attention back to Earth, to Micah and Liam's former boss. The two are still seated at a high-end restaurant, laughing about what happened. Liam's boss jokes that maybe he went a bit far ruining the guy's life, but Micah? She doesn't regret a thing. In her mind, Liam had it coming after stealing 10 years of her life. Just when it seemed like things couldn't get worse, a swarm of officers suddenly surrounds Liam's former employer. In moments, they're slapping cuffs on him and handing over a warrant. He tries to act shocked, claiming it's all just a mix-up, but the cops aren't buying it. They've already seen the incriminating footage proving he framed Liam for the theft. There's no loophole to save him now, and his future is locked behind bars. With her golden ticket now facing a long prison term, Micah's illusion of a perfect life crumbles on the spot. The fancy meals, the easy wealth, it all disappears, replaced by silence and regret. Watching it all unfold is the guide, the mysterious entity behind Liam's reincarnation, relishing every ounce of her collapse. This is the kind of poetic justice he lives for. But Liam's journey isn't headed toward peace. The guide isn't interested in giving him a happy ending, quite the opposite. He plans to drop Liam into a far more ruthless world, one where people live for hundreds of years. That way, Liam has plenty of time to sink deeper into hopelessness. Because that's the guide's true delight, feeding off endless suffering. Far across space, on an unfamiliar world, a pirate faction led by the Go family is mid-invasion. Everything seems to be going smoothly, until out of nowhere, half their ranks go up in flames. Chaos breaks out, and the captain whirls around only to see her. Christiana, maid of the Holy Kingdom of Leave and royal heir by birth. A terror on the battlefield, Christiana floats above the wreckage like divine wrath given form. With a blade as fast as lightning and movements full of grace and fury, she turns the tide single-handedly. The pirates begin to flee, but she's not done. Her voice cuts through the battlefield as she commands her soldiers to chase them down. There will be no forgiveness today. This is a message to the world: trespass into Leave's domain, and you won't walk away. Meanwhile, Liam awakens in his new life and finally gets to unwrap his customized AI unit. It arrives in a plain, unimpressive cube, but his butler assures him it's the real deal, he just needs to touch it. The moment his hand brushes the surface, the cube unfolds, and a humanoid figure descends with fluid grace. She introduces herself as Meiji. The butler formally announces that she'll be Liam's full-time assistant, active around the clock except for her weekly maintenance. But Liam isn't focused on the details. Instead, he circles Meiji slowly, studying her with the same intensity someone might give a freshly delivered luxury car. The butler watches nervously, asking what exactly he thinks he's doing. Liam casually responds that he's just making sure all the custom features he paid for were delivered. The butler is visibly shaken, urging Liam to act more appropriately, but Liam brushes it off and invites Meiji to his room for a more hands-on inspection. The butler can only sigh in quiet horror, wondering what kind of person this young master is turning into. Hours pass, and Liam lounges in comfort while Meiji massages his shoulders. The butler barges in, demanding to know what's been happening. Liam just shrugs, reminding him that while his body is young, his mind is 36 years old. The butler isn't impressed. In this world, he says, 36 is still barely older than a toddler. That stuns Liam, until Meiji calmly explains that the average lifespan in this world is around 600 years. Most folks here don't even count as adults until they're at least 100. Liam was floored. He hadn't realized lifespans stretched that far in this world, but honestly, he didn't mind. It just meant more time to experience everything this place had to offer. And if Meiji could stay by his side the whole way, that would be the dream. But there was a problem: Meiji. The Empire wasn't exactly known for being friendly toward AI. If people found out Liam treated one like family, it would spread like wildfire, and not in a good way. Curious about the hostility, Liam asked his butler why AI were so hated. The butler explained that long ago, AI nearly brought humanity to extinction during something called the Great Skynet War. Humans were enslaved and nearly wiped out until a resistance rose up and reclaimed their freedom. That resistance eventually became the core of the Empire, so it made sense that nobles still carried a grudge. But if that was true, Liam couldn't wrap his head around why his own mother gave him an AI for his birthday. The butler hesitated. He wasn't supposed to talk about it. But Liam wasn't just a child anymore. He was the new count. So he gave a direct order. Reluctantly, the butler confessed Liam's parents had abandoned him and disappeared. Shocked, Liam asked why. The butler explained they'd left him saddled with the entire debt of the Banfield family to escape it themselves. It turned out Liam's great-grandfather, Alastair, was once a legend. He built up the Banfield name with honor and achievement. But Liam's father tore it all down. After inheriting the title, his father drove the family into financial ruin. Now the Banfields had no land worth farming, no real industry, and no income. Paying off the debt was basically impossible. Liam had inherited a title, sure, but it came with a mountain of problems. Elsewhere on planet Hydra, a few locals nursed drinks in a shadowy bar, grumbling about the new noble in charge. Word was that their fresh-faced ruler was just 5 years old. One man ranted about how the last leadership change made taxes skyrocket for no reason, and nobody could push back. All they could do now was hope things didn't fall apart again. Back at the estate, Liam sat with the truth still sinking in. If the family was broke for years, why would his parents shove the burden onto a kid? That's when it hit him. They might have had him just to pin it all on someone. In his past life, Liam had been mistreated, used up, and discarded like trash. But this life? No one was going to treat him like that again. He turned to Meiji and asked if she'd help him shape a future where he held the power. She agreed without hesitation, saying that serving Liam gave her life meaning. And for once, Liam felt like he had someone who would stand beside him without fail. It gave him a real sense of peace. But before they built anything, Liam figured he needed to set a few rules, his own version of robot laws. First and foremost, Meiji must never bring harm to any human. Halfway through speaking, he pauses, reconsidering his words. Truthfully, he doesn't care much for the rest of the world. So, instead of following standard protocols, he decides to create his own personalized guidelines. First, Meiji can never harm him under any circumstance. Second, she must obey any command he gives, provided it doesn't conflict with the first rule. Third, she's permitted to defend herself as long as it doesn't contradict the first two. With those ground rules in place, Liam turns to Meiji and tells her he's genuinely committed to restoring the Banfield territory. But knowing he's still pretty ignorant about how things function in this world, he asks if she has any solid plans to get started. Meiji quickly scans her database and eventually presents a possible strategy. Before laying it out, though, she warns him that it might not align with the Empire's customs since her reasoning is algorithm-driven. Even so, she reassures him that she can offer top-tier assistance in handling domain affairs. Liam openly admits he doesn't understand any of this, prompting Meiji to suggest an education pod, a sophisticated device that compresses a decade of learning into 6 months. Additionally, the pod improves one's physical capabilities during the training. It's essentially an advanced simulation chamber. Liam thinks it sounds like the ideal solution, but he's worried about leaving the territory unattended during that time. After a brief thought, he opts to temporarily hand over leadership to Meiji. Ryan, the aging butler, immediately objects, clearly uncomfortable with giving that kind of authority to an AI. Liam dismisses the concern, arguing that Meiji won't mess anything up unless he tells her to, and there's technically no law prohibiting an AI from acting as a temporary overseer. For the time being, everything is entrusted to her. Soon after, the capsule is prepped and ready. As Liam prepares to enter it, he turns to Meiji with one last question. He asks if she's capable of emotions, or something similar. Meiji admits she isn't entirely sure, but when Liam earlier requested she be his partner, her logs triggered a memory overflow, essentially the AI equivalent of feeling joy. That response makes Liam smile. He thanks her once more and tells her he's trusting her completely. Then, without looking back, he enters the capsule and begins his fast-tracked education. Time skips forward, Liam's training is complete, and the pod opens to reveal Meiji waiting for him. His first question is about how much time has passed. Meiji answers, it's been 2 whole years. After getting dressed, she gives him a full report on how things have progressed in the Banfield territory. To his relief, everything has gone smoothly. Liam expresses gratitude for how well she handled things during his absence. He mentions wanting to see the territory firsthand, so Meiji offers to give him a tour, beginning with the battleship hangar. It's his first time seeing it in person, and what really grabs his attention is the collection of battle suits. Intrigued, he asks if he can test one. Meiji gladly arranges it. She explains that the suit operates via neural interface, just think of a movement, and it responds. Liam tries it out, and as soon as the suit activates, he starts moving around in it. Clearly impressed, he remarks that he'd like to try sparring in it. Meiji assures him that won't be a problem at all. A few minutes later, the planet's head of defense, Mashida, shows up to spar with Liam. The training match kicks off with Liam lunging in to make the first move. Mashida blocks it easily, then dramatically acts like he's been defeated. The performance is unconvincing, and Liam quickly catches on that Mashida is pulling his punches. He doesn't like being humored, so he demands Mashida take the fight seriously. Since it's an order, Mashida has to obey. Liam charges again, but this time, Mashida catches the blade mid-swing, disarms him effortlessly, and throws him to the ground in one smooth move. Liam is stunned at how quickly it ended. Meiji explains that the suit reacts to what the user can picture clearly, and with Mashida's extensive combat experience, his control is much sharper. Frustrated and embarrassed by the loss, Liam orders Brian to find him a seasoned combat trainer immediately. Brian tries to talk him out of it, pointing out there's no real reason for Liam to learn hand-to-hand combat himself. But Liam shuts him down. In his past life, he was dominated by those with power, and this time, if he's going to lead the Thori, he intends to make sure he can defend himself. Soon after, he's introduced to a man named Yosushi, said to be a master of the elusive way of the Flash. Liam is thrilled. He thinks Yosushi looks like a total legend, so he wastes no time asking him to become his sword instructor. Yosushi agrees instantly, which only fuels Liam's excitement. But Meiji is wary. Something about Yosushi seems off to her. Liam doesn't argue, he admits Yosushi might be sketchy, but says he's willing to give him a shot because the man looks like an old-school warrior. Still, Meiji pushes him to verify Yosushi's skills before making it official. Liam agrees and asks for a demonstration. Yosushi leads them to a quiet forest clearing, where several wooden posts are already set up. He announces he'll now show them his secret move, the legendary way of the Flash, and warns that he won't perform it again, so Liam better watch closely. Eager not to miss anything, Liam tells Meiji to record the moment. Yosushi takes his stance, barely unsheathes his blade, then snaps it back in. In the blink of an eye, every post splits cleanly in two. Liam is blown away, it looks impossible. He asks Meiji to replay the footage in slow motion, hoping to catch the movement. But even frame by frame, the sword never appears to leave the sheath. Liam figures Yosushi moved so fast the cameras couldn't capture it, which only makes him more certain that Yosushi is the real deal and begs him to take him on as a student. Later that night, Yosushi returns to the clearing, smirking to himself. He's amazed Liam actually fell for the trick. All he did was score the posts ahead of time so they'd fall apart with a tap, just a simple stage trick. Now, thanks to a bit of flair and a gullible noble, he's secured a cushy gig with great pay and barely any work. Meanwhile, far across the stars, Princess Christiana arrives to meet the Go's pirates for a diplomatic summit. Go's had requested the meeting, but as soon as she boards their ship, he ridicules her for coming unaccompanied. Christiana stands firm, telling Go she's not alone, that if anything happens to her, the entire Allied fleet is ready to obliterate his ship on command. She expects this threat to give her the advantage, but Go remains completely unfazed. He knows the Alliance's loyalty to her isn't nearly as absolute as she assumes. At that exact moment, a distress alert pings through Christiana's comms. Her homeworld is under siege. Pirates have breached the defenses, and she's stunned. Those planetary shields should have held. Go smirks and reveals the harsh truth: the alliance she painstakingly assembled has already begun to crumble. A few well-placed bribes and promises were enough to turn some of her key allies against her. Moments later, her crew sends in a critical update. The nearby Allied ships have aimed their weapons at her own vessel. She's in shock. Go's has managed to turn her entire support network on its head. With nowhere to turn, she's forced to hear him out. On the other side of the galaxy, Liam is struggling. Yosushi's brutal training is wearing him down. Despite years of practice, Liam still can't execute the legendary sword technique he's chasing. He turns to Meiji, hoping for a shortcut, but she admits she can't help. After all, she's an AI, not a sword master. For 3 years, Yosushi has kept Liam locked into basic drills. And while it's definitely sharpened his skills, as Amaji often reminds him, Liam's not satisfied. He doesn't just want to be competent, he wants a move that makes people take notice. That evening, Yosushi relaxes in his quarters, flipping through old manga, amazed he's managed to fake it this long. He's no master swordsman, but he knows just enough to keep the illusion alive. Teaching beginner techniques to Liam has earned him a fortune, and if luck holds, he hopes the scam will stretch on. But his plan nearly unravels when Liam walks in and earnestly asks him to finally reveal the way of the Flash. Yosushi panics and immediately declares he's quitting. He argues that since he already showed the move once, there's nothing left to teach. If Liam's not satisfied, he says, there's no point in continuing. Instead of reacting with anger, Liam drops to his knees, apologizing with deep sincerity for crossing a line. Reluctantly, Yosushi agrees to keep going, warning him never to overstep again. Once Liam leaves, Yosushi exhales sharply, visibly shaken. That was too close. He knows damn well he can't teach Liam a technique that doesn't actually exist. Just as he's starting to calm down, Liam unexpectedly reappears. Yosushi tenses, thinking the jig is up. But Liam only stops by to say he'll be out tomorrow and can't make training. Meanwhile, Christiana sits imprisoned in the private quarters aboard Go's flagship. She demands to know what he's planning. Go's just chuckles, saying he wanted her to have the perfect view. She's puzzled until he gives a chilling command: every ship under his control is to target her homeworld. The moment it clicks, panic floods her. She begs him to stop, but Go's looks entirely unmoved. He gives the command, and Christiana can do nothing but watch in horror as her homeworld is obliterated before her eyes. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, Liam is still preoccupied with his inability to master that signature sword technique, but he sets it aside to focus on more pressing matters. He asks Meiji for the latest monthly report. She brings up a series of graphs and data showing the status of the Banfield domain. The financial outlook is still grim, but there's been a steady uptick in production and infrastructure. Liam feels a bit of relief, glad that things aren't completely falling apart. He compliments Meiji on the progress, but she responds with dissatisfaction. Despite their large-scale investments, especially in welfare, the returns are far lower than expected. That raises a red flag for Liam. He asks for a detailed report on welfare spending. His past life of crunching numbers makes it easy for him to spot the problem. Something's clearly off. He tells Meiji to summon the noble in charge of the budget. Soon enough, a greasy-looking aristocrat waddles into the room. Liam doesn't bother with formalities. He gives the man one chance to come clean. The noble feigns ignorance, but Liam lays out the truth. The accounting has been manipulated. The numbers don't align, proving the noble has been siphoning funds. What he thought was a clever disguise is obvious to someone used to auditing corporate books. Liam also questions the sudden change of vendors. The noble claims it was about efficiency, but the lack of results tells a different story. It's clear he rerouted contracts to businesses under his control for personal gain. Surprisingly, Liam isn't even enraged. In fact, he expected this. After all, his goal in this world was to become the kind of corrupt noble feared in whispers. And now he sees how to use his authority the same way this slimeball has. Just then, Meiji informs him that this noble had already been investigated once before for embezzlement. Liam is stunned he's still employed. The noble quickly explains that his underling took the blame. Liam asks Meiji to confirm, and she does. The official report exonerates the noble, pinning it all on his subordinate, who was later executed. No concrete evidence was ever brought forward. Liam knows this trick well. It's the classic move, sacrifice a pawn to dodge accountability. He calls it out. The noble panics, trying to deny everything, but Liam isn't interested in his pathetic lies. Sword in hand, Liam begins walking toward him. The noble scrambles, insisting that this is just how nobles operate, that it's part of the system. But Liam's patience is gone. As he raises his blade, Meiji suddenly steps in and urges him to wait. Thinking he's been saved, the noble gets cocky and shouts that Liam is just a child who doesn't understand the real world. Before he finishes, Liam strikes, his sword gleams, and the noble's head rolls across the floor. Still buzzing with adrenaline, Liam gives a cold, firm order. Meiji is to launch a full investigation and purge every corrupt noble in the domain. Meiji urges him to calm down. This was Liam's first Real kill, and the shock has locked his body in place. He can't even let go of the sword. Meiji carefully pulls her hand away and, regarding Liam's earlier command, she points out that eliminating all the corrupt nobles would cause massive disruption. Nearly all of them are tainted, and their removal would plunge the entire political system into chaos. However, she proposes a solution. A group of capable administrators could step in to fill the void left by the nobles, ensuring continuity. Liam trusts her judgment and gives his approval for this plan. Back at the battlesuit hangar, Liam is eager to continue his training. Having grasped the basics of swordsmanship, he's now itching to try them out in a battlesuit. However, before he can begin, Yasushi enters the room and scorns the idea of using a default automated suit, claiming that true warriors never rely on such AI-dependent technology. Determined to improve, Liam asks Mashidek if there's a better alternative. That's when he learns about a special battlesuit that once belonged to his great-grandfather, Alistair. It's a rare, fully manual relic, one that no one has ever been able to operate successfully. This discovery sparks Liam's desire to get his hands on the suit. Meanwhile, Yasushi, grumbling about Liam's surprising progress, heads to an old shrine to search for anything valuable. He curses the fact that the training is actually working, despite it all being a scam. Yasushi realizes he can't keep deceiving Liam forever, and the only way to continue profiting from him is to invent more pointless tasks. While idly leaning against a wall, Yasushi accidentally activates a hidden mechanism that reveals an ancient mobile knight, rusty and worn, but to him, it's the perfect tool to keep Liam distracted and the money flowing. Back on Earth, the malevolent guide is still on the hunt for negative emotions. He encounters a man losing his temper at a Starbucks over cream sticking to the lid of his cappuccino. The guide enjoys the petty bitterness of the man's tantrum but craves something far more potent. Meanwhile, Yasushi has already given Liam a new task, to restore the ancient mobile knight, now dubbed Avid, as part of his training. Eager to prove himself, Liam dives into mastering the so-called flash technique, which Yasushi insists is crucial to becoming a true warrior. His ever-loyal butler, Brian, watches with mixed feelings. Though he's secretly delighted that Avid once belonged to Liam's great-great-grandfather, he remains skeptical. Brian tells Liam that he's wasting his time on a primitive machine and dismisses Yasushi's technique as nonsense. Yet Liam, resolute in his belief that hard work and perseverance will lead to real growth, continues his training undeterred. Meanwhile, Meiji arrives at the site where Avid is stored and immediately expresses her doubts about Yasushi and his teachings. She questions his credentials as a swordsman, but since Liam has personally assigned her to repair Avid, she relents. Rolling up her sleeves, she prepares to fix the ancient machine, despite her reservations. Niaz Karlin, an engineer from a weapons factory, arrives with her team at Liam's domain to begin repairs on Avid. Liam personally greets her at the spaceport to wish her well, and during their conversation, Niaz notices Meiji standing quietly next to him. Instantly, she becomes curious, wondering what an advanced AI doll is doing in the company of someone like Liam. Liam, misinterpreting her reaction, becomes defensive, sharply telling Niaz that he has every right to own an AI doll and won't tolerate any judgment. However, Niaz is an android enthusiast and, far from judging, is thrilled by the chance to examine Meiji up close. She immediately starts inspecting Meiji with intense interest, almost like a fan meeting their idol. In her excitement, Niaz can't resist getting too close, even trying to lift Meiji's skirt to get a better look at her design. Liam quickly steps in to stop her, warning that this area holds sensitive military information, and it's not for public display. After the awkward exchange, they head to the warehouse where Avid is being stored. Upon seeing the heavily damaged machine, Niaz bluntly assesses that it's practically scrap metal. She advises Liam to scrap the old unit and invest in a new one rather than waste money on repairs. Liam, however, is adamant. He refuses to accept a standard issue replacement and insists that only Avid will do, no matter the cost. Niaz sighs, warning that restoring Avid will be a complicated and expensive process. Not only are replacement parts hard to find, but the size of Avid also means the repairs will require a small fortune. Liam brushes off the financial concerns, quickly suggesting a solution. He tells Niaz to retrofit Avid with parts from newer models, believing this will enhance its performance. However, Liam has one non-negotiable condition: the automatic support functions must be removed. He insists on full manual control, as ordered by Yosushi, and won't allow any modern conveniences to interfere with his learning process. Before leaving, Liam throws in one last request. He wants Avid to have a rocket punch or detachable flying fist attack. To him, no ancient machine is truly complete without one. Just then, Yosushi enters the warehouse to check on the progress of Avid's restoration. The moment Yosushi spots Niaz, he is completely captivated by her, overwhelmed by her beauty in a way that causes him to have a nosebleed. Panicking, he quickly wipes it away, trying to regain his composure, and strides over to introduce himself. Despite his efforts, Niaz is too engrossed in her conversation with Liam to notice him. Unfazed, Yosushi continues trying, cheerfully introducing himself and even asking her out on a date. But Niaz, too preoccupied with explaining why Liam's suggestion of adding special moves to Avid is completely impractical, doesn't acknowledge his attempts. Liam, as confident as ever, responds casually by offering Niaz any amount of money she needs to get the job done, which causes her to quickly relent. After all, her main goal had always been to milk as much cash from Liam as possible. Yosushi, however, watches from the sidelines, burning with jealousy as he observes Liam and his fated wife chatting as though they were the stars of a romantic comedy. Seething, he silently vows revenge, and since he can't strike directly at Liam, he plans a far more extreme and ridiculous training regimen. This time, Yosushi's genius plan is to have Liam train while completely blindfolded. He drags Liam to a river and forces him to balance on a slippery log, all while trying to stay steady. To make things worse, Yosushi gleefully begins firing tennis balls at Liam from a custom-built launcher. Clearly, Yosushi is just venting his personal frustration over Liam stealing his potential love interest, but he disguises it as a way to improve Liam's swordsmanship. Liam, getting bombarded with tennis balls while desperately trying not to fall into the river, grumbles about the absurd weight of his sword, but follows his master's insane instructions, continuing to train. His goal, to dodge the tennis balls using only his mind's eye. Meanwhile, on the pirate flagship, Commander Goes strolls into the prison cells, where he reveals that he has been holding numerous women captive, including Princess Christiana. He doesn't bother with explanations, simply ordering Christiana to step forward as he announces that they've arrived at their destination, Treasure Island. Goes, leering at Christiana, gets too close, commenting on how her beauty makes him shudder with excitement. Without hesitation, he drags her to the ship's laboratory, where his deranged assistant awaits, flinging open the door to reveal a terrifying sight. Inside the room lies one of Goze's earlier projects, a woman so mutilated and deformed she barely resembles a human. With a twisted laugh, Goze tosses her out of the ship like trash, then turns his attention back to Christiana. He announces that she will be his next project, his newest, prized pet. Unhurried, Goze begins brainstorming ways to modify his new toy. His assistant suggests some cruel ideas, such as cutting off Christiana's legs, but Goze, ever the twisted innovator, comes up with something even worse. He proposes gouging out Christiana's eyes and grafting them onto her palms. Trapped in this nightmare, Christiana looks around in horror, spotting rows of test tubes containing other mutilated victims. It becomes painfully clear that without a miracle, her fate will be no different. Back at Liam's estate, weeks pass, and Niaz finally finishes repairing Avid, outfitting it with all the custom features based on Liam's eccentric requests. But there's still one final step. Niaz brings Liam into Avid's cockpit to teach him the basics of operation. True to her nature, she can't resist getting a little playful, pulling her top halfway down under the guise of needing more freedom to demonstrate properly. Liam, doing his best to ignore his nerves, follows Niaz's instructions and begins powering up the ancient mobile knight. Avid scans him, recognizing him as its sole pilot from that moment forward. No one else will be able to operate it again. With a rush of excitement, Liam takes his first step, only to immediately stumble and crash to the ground, toppling the entire mech. Nias, unimpressed, reminds him that Avid doesn't come with modern conveniences like automatic stabilizers, and unlike newer models, piloting it isn't as simple as pushing a button. But if Liam can master controlling Avid manually, it will be like controlling his own body. Determined, Liam pulls himself up and tries again. This time, he manages to keep his balance much better. He successfully pilots Avid out of the warehouse, and while practicing, Nia stresses the importance of maintaining a solid mental image to control the mobile knight effectively. She moves in closer to adjust the controls, but her large figure accidentally brushes against him, completely throwing off Liam's focus. The result is that Avid starts making awkward gestures, as if reaching out for something it really shouldn't. Nias immediately realizes what must be on Liam's mind and shoots him a suspicious glare. Liam hurriedly defends himself, claiming it wasn't his fault. Meanwhile, Yosushi, watching from a distance, is convinced Liam is misusing his position inside the cockpit for some inappropriate behavior with Nias. Brian, on the other hand, is grinning and wiping tears, thrilled that his master is finally showing an interest in a real woman instead of a robot. Yosushi, burning with jealousy, curses Liam under his breath and vows to make his training even more intense. As days pass, Liam continues to struggle with his master's so-called secret technique, unsure if he even has the talent for it. Meiji, who has been quietly skeptical for a while, finally speaks up, suggesting that perhaps the issue isn't with Liam, but with Yosushi's questionable teaching methods. Liam, being loyal to his master, refuses to believe this. Instead, he begins to formulate a theory. Maybe the secret to Yosushi's ultimate move isn't about swordsmanship, but magic. Liam believes it's the magic power, not the sword, that actually cuts through the logs. So, he starts focusing on channeling his mana into his sword, swinging it with the intention of using magical power to slice through the wood. Days turn into months, and months into years, but through relentless practice, Liam finally succeeds in mastering the secret technique, one that should never have existed in the first place. Now fully grown and stronger than ever, Liam demonstrates his achievement to Yosushi by effortlessly slicing a log from a great distance with a single swing of his sword. Yosushi is in turmoil inside. His self-crafted techniques were never intended to amount to anything, so witnessing Liam execute an impossible feat shakes him to his core. Yet, with a composed demeanor, Yosushi simply nods sagely, telling Liam he still has much to learn before mastering the technique fully. A few weeks later, Liam is in space aboard his battleship with Meiji when an urgent report comes through from a subordinate. Nuke, a small, abandoned planet within Liam's territory once used for energy production, is under attack by a pirate fleet. The small military force stationed there is struggling to defend against the pirates' mobile knights, and the subordinate doubts they can hold out much longer with their limited resources. Meiji quickly steps forward with a plan, suggesting they strike the pirates' blind spot by using gravity wells and natural space terrain. Liam approves of her strategy and orders the fleet to move in, with him volunteering to protect the planet on the front lines. Brian, overhearing, pleads with Liam not to put himself in danger, but Liam, driven by pride and determination, refuses to back down. To Liam, this isn't recklessness, he's no coward. He's a warrior, trained by the legendary samurai, and he's eager to show the Empire the power he's cultivated. Without further hesitation, Liam climbs into his mobile knight, Evid, and rockets toward Nuke. He launches a surprise attack from the pirates' blind spot, cutting through their forces with precision, tearing apart enemy mobile knights before they even realize what's happening. In mere moments, Liam decimates their ranks, then adds flair by activating his beaming rifle, sending a powerful plasma beam through one of the pirate units. He doesn't stop there. With his secret technique, the Way of the Flash, Liam effortlessly slices through dozens more enemies from a distance. The pirates, overwhelmed by his relentless assault, begin retreating toward their ships. Liam seizes the opportunity and launches his rocket punch, a special move where Evid's fist rockets toward the enemy. The punch hits as expected, but Liam isn't impressed. Mid-battle, he radios Nias, grumbling that he wanted a throwable fist, not a punching missile. Before Nias can reply, Meiji cuts in with a report. Despite their efforts, only 10% of the enemy fleet has been captured, with 30% destroyed in the attack, while the rest of the ships managed to escape. Still, Liam considers the mission a success, praising Vice Commander Meiji for her excellent work. Meanwhile, Ghost received some infuriating news. The pirate crew he dispatched to hit the Banfield resource world had completely botched the operation. He was livid. Dr. Frankenstein broke it down. The crew underestimated the defenders, and if they hadn't pulled back, they'd have lost the entire strike force. Sounded reasonable on paper, but Ghost wasn't buying it. He didn't give a damn about excuses. As far as he was concerned, anyone who retreated was a disgrace, and he decided on the spot that every last one of them would be executed. No second chances. After settling that matter, he swore to take the job into his own hands, a brutal message that no one fails him and lives. Before heading out, he told Christiana, now more monstrous and unsettling than ever, that he'd return to play it with her later. At that same time, Lion and his fleet were returning from their skirmish, and Lion was riding high on the victory. Not only had they protected the resource world, but they'd also managed to snag a bunch of pirate vessels. Under Imperial law, any captured pirate ship and its cargo became the property of the captor. And as luck had it, these ships were loaded with stolen riches. When Lion first heard the word treasure, he started dreaming about piles of gold and sparkling gems, but Brian quickly shattered that fantasy. The real prize was way more valuable, the stash of rare metals like orichalcum and adamantite. Still, Lion wasn't exactly thrilled. He'd wanted something more glamorous, maybe a jewel-encrusted crown or glittering artifacts. To him, diamonds were worth more in appearance than in actual value, even though they were practically worthless compared to those rare metals. Lion just like gold, period. Brian, picking up on his obsession, casually mentioned that there was some gold among the loot. That was all Lion needed to hear. He immediately ordered the gold melted down into coins. Brian asked if he wanted to mint coins from the orichalcum and adamantite as well, but Lion shut that idea down fast. Those rare resources had a more serious purpose, top-tier weapon crafting for his army. But just as he was getting into treasure mode, McGee dropped some important news. They had a problem. There was no one in the fleet with the skills to forge weapons from such rare materials. And worse, after scanning the Banfield military's fleet, about 10,000 ships in total, he discovered something alarming. Most of the ships were non-functional. When the call came to fight, only 30% had actually been battle-ready. Lion was stunned they'd managed to win with such a crippled force, a real miracle, given the odds. Truth was, the pirates had seriously misjudged them. The rest of the Empire still saw Banfield as some backwards, poverty-stricken region, so of course, the pirates figured it would be an easy hit. And maybe they would have been right, if not for Lion and his unmatched skill in battle mechs. Even so, he understood one thing clearly: if the pirates regrouped and came back full force, their current fleet wouldn't survive the next round. Lion was fed up. More than 70% of their fleet was practically scrap metal. McGee floated an idea: maybe it was time to cut their losses and dump the useless vessels. Ryan didn't take kindly to that. He warned that scrapping the deadweight would tank their fleet strength numbers, making them look like easy prey to outsiders. Fair point, but keeping broken ships afloat wasn't free either. The upkeep alone was bleeding their budget dry, and Lion wasn't about to waste resources on junk. He backed McGee's idea. To ease Ryan's concerns, McGee added they could just invest in fresh, modern ships to replace what they scrapped. Besides, they had recently scored a haul of rare metals from some raided pirate ships. Selling those should more than cover the cost of building a new, more reliable fleet. In short, money wasn't the issue. While all that was being debated, Niaz was in the middle of showcasing her latest prototype, presenting it like a proud inventor unveiling a masterpiece. She was excited. This new model delivered a 7% boost in output, improved handling, and was easier to service. She insisted that if approved, her ships would take the Imperial fleet strength to new heights. Then came the turn of Lieutenant Ulysses Morrisile from the 3rd Weapons Factory. Her presentation took a different turn. Her ship wasn't built for war. It was a luxury vessel masquerading as a cruiser. Think hotel in space, entertainment, relaxation lounges, even a golf simulator and a jacuzzi. Sure, Niaz's ships packed more of a punch, but they didn't exactly scream comfort. And oddly enough, that mattered. The Empire ended up placing their order with Ulysses instead. Niaz protested, claiming her model outperformed the competition in every technical area, but Ulysses had a rebuttal ready. Her ship could handle combat too, but the real strength came from a motivated crew. If soldiers could unwind with a drink or a hot soak after a mission, morale and performance would skyrocket. As the meeting ended and they exited the hall, Ulysses couldn't resist rubbing her win in Niaz's face. But Niaz wasn't throwing in the towel. This battle might be lost, but she was far from done. She believed that in actual combat, her design would prove its worth. The catch? She'd entered her entire budget into the project. With the army rejecting her work, she was facing financial ruin unless she found a buyer crazy enough to take the entire batch off her hands. Odds weren't great. Who would invest in a model the military dismissed? Then a thought hit her: Liam. If that guy was willing to dump money into restoring ancient mechs, he just might be reckless enough to fund her dream. Meanwhile, the guide had been lounging back on Earth, feeding off human suffering like it was his favorite hobby. Truth be told, nothing could compare to the hell Liam was supposed to be enduring right now. The last time the Overseer had checked in on him, he'd stranded the kid in a backwater world with trash-tier parents who abandoned him and dumped a mountain of debt on his head. He fully expected Liam's little fiefdom to be in shambles. But when he finally took a peek, the place was thriving. That alone had him seething. His whole master plan to crush Liam's spirit was apparently a bust. Still, he had one last fail-safe. When Liam had requested a mentor to teach him swordsmanship, the Overseer had sent him Yosushi, a complete fake who had no business even holding a sword, let alone teaching someone how to use one. There was no way Liam could have picked up anything real from that guy. Elsewhere, in a quiet tavern, townsfolk were happily gossiping about how much better life had gotten under Liam's leadership. Everyone seemed genuinely glad to have him in charge. All the while, Yosushi sat off to the side, looking troubled. To him, Liam wasn't a hero, he was a damn monster. Yosushi knew he was a fraud. He'd spent months piling on impossible lessons, confident Liam would eventually break or fail. But somehow, the kid just kept pushing through. He even started pulling off feats Yosushi didn't think anyone could manage. The overseer, listening in, was baffled by what he heard and decided to investigate further. What he found left him stunned. Liam, deep in training, casually demolished a reinforced post without even touching it. The worst part? The overseer hadn't granted him any cheat codes or overpowered tricks. Everything Liam had, he'd earned himself. He just couldn't make sense of it. In a world stacked against him, Liam was winning. And Liam wasn't entirely sure how either. Being abandoned at 5 and shouldering impossible debt should have broken him. Yet, here he was, leading a prosperous territory, chasing his dreams. And ironically, it was all because of the overseer's original scheme. That bitter irony left a foul taste in the overseer's mouth. He hated every second of it. Trying to steady his nerves, he latched onto Yosushi's frustration, feeding off it until he felt more like himself again. With his cool restored, he began plotting once more. Liam's success made it all the more satisfying because the higher he climbed, the harder the drop. And the overseer would make damn sure the fall hurt. At that moment, Liam was in the middle of a meeting with Meiji, asking if there were any updates on the ship's situation. Meiji explained that the Imperial military was upgrading its fleet and selling off older models for cheap. Outdated or not, Imperial ships were still beasts. Liam was immediately interested. But Meiji added a warning: there was a condition attached. They were required to bring on the entire crew that came with the ships. In reality, the Empire was using this deal to offload unwanted personnel along with outdated vessels. Hiring so many people would definitely drive up expenses, but Meiji calculated that their finances could absorb the impact. Besides, many of the crew were seasoned officers with critical experience. Bringing them in would significantly enhance Liam's military strength. Framed that way, the offer seemed too good to pass up, and Liam accepted without second thoughts. The guide overheard the exchange and sensed an opening. He figured he could twist the situation to suit his goal of dragging Liam into misery. All he had to do was maneuver a few self-righteous, rule-following types into Liam's forces. Eventually, Liam would be marching around like some Dark Lord, and it'd only be a matter of time before those noble types turned on him in the name of justice. Meanwhile, Yosushi was at home, groaning through a vicious hangover, wondering how his life had gone so off the rails. That's when Nia's voice suddenly called out to him. He snapped into action, frantically tidying up and slipping back into his act as the wise and serious teacher. Nia had been unsure of him at first, but after seeing Liam grow stronger under Yosushi's so-called guidance, she began to believe he might be the real deal. Yosushi was honestly shocked that she came to see him willingly. For a fleeting moment, he thought maybe he had a chance with her. But no, she was just there for information on Liam. What threw him off was how she phrased her questions. She wanted to know how to get Liam to listen to her pitch without coming off as pushy. Nervous about saying the wrong thing, she asked Yosushi how to get a guy in a good mood. He misunderstood immediately, assuming she was looking for tips on seduction. At the same time, he didn't want to seem like a pervert by being too direct. But when Nia pleaded with him, practically begging like her life was on the line, Yosushi caved. Without holding back, he spilled every last romantic fantasy and scenario he'd imagined, complete with vivid detail and emotional nuance. Nia stood frozen, silent for a few moments, and Yosushi panicked, thinking he'd gone way overboard. But then she calmly asked if stockings would help too. Yosushi was stunned. She didn't think he was a weirdo, but he quickly nodded and said stockings were definitely the right move. Nia sincerely thanked him and later that day arrived at Liam's residence wearing exactly what Yosushi had described, hoping to charm him into listening to her sales pitch. Liam might have been a little innocent, but he wasn't dumb. The moment Liam laid eyes on her, he could tell Nia was scheming something. And, as usual, it wasn't hard to guess, she clearly wanted him to make a purchase. Nia came clean about wanting to sell him the latest battleship model she'd put together, but Liam shot her down before she could get into the details. She pleaded with him to at least listen before rejecting her offer, but Liam wasn't interested. He didn't need to hear specs or promotions, he'd already acquired a load of second-hand ships from the Imperial fleet. He had no use for more. Undeterred, Nia launched into a passionate pitch, listing off stats and features that were admittedly impressive. Still, Liam told her to take the ships back to the Imperial Army if they were so great. That's when she admitted she'd already tried, and failed. She couldn't sell a single unit at the recent exhibition. Desperation kicked in as she begged him to take even a small batch, saying that even a few hundred ships would be a huge help to her. She even offered to help arrange a loan if cash was a problem, but Liam stopped her cold. The idea of going back into debt made his stomach turn. Nia was clearly at her limit now, so much so that she resorted to stripping right in front of him, hoping seduction might close the deal. Instead of tempting him, it just brought back bad memories of his past life, of how his ex-wife probably used the same tactics on his former boss. He knew Nia wasn't like that, but watching her stoop so low made him feel sorry for her. With a sigh, Liam figured the fastest way to end this awkward scene was to give in. He turned to Meiji and asked if there was room in the budget. Meiji confirmed they could swing around 300 ships. So Liam agreed to buy that number, and Nia lit up with gratitude, promising quick delivery. Unfortunately, in her excitement, she tripped and went face first into the floor. Liam had to admit, Nia was incredibly talented when it came to design and engineering, and she wasn't hard on the eyes. But sometimes, she was just a disaster. Out in the corridor, Nia was beaming as she barked orders to prep the 300 ships. Her logistics officer was stunned she'd managed to sell them, but Nia just winked and said it was all thanks to her irresistible charm. Back in the throne room, Liam was reclining as Meiji carefully cleaned his ears, feeling utterly at ease. Everything was running smoothly in his world. That's a wrap on episode 6, hit subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next.